Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of the Abona Tennis Online Coaching Podcast. This is your coach, JY Abona. Thank you for joining us from a very unique episode as I'm actually recording from the inside of my car right now. Yep, these are the things you do when your baby is napping. All right, we cannot take a risk that they wake up early. All right, they got to get that nap in. I got to get this recording in. And I knew if I recorded it even in a quiet room, I could be risking a little bit. So here we are from my car discussing some junior tennis thoughts where we're going to be talking about how important is it to train with higher level tennis players. And originally, the way I usually do things is that I write the blog first, and then from there comes the podcast. And I was really struggling with the blog because I couldn't keep it simple enough. I couldn't keep it short enough. I felt like I was gonna have to write like a whole book about this because it's not that simple. Some of the concepts are easy, but you'll see as we talk things out in regards to what it means for your child's training program, or if you're a player listening to this, what it means for your program. You'll see some of the complications with this that coaches and academies have to try to provide this. So let's get started first with the question of how important is it to train with higher level players? Well, look, it is important because we are a product of the environment we grow up in. And this isn't just on the court, but even off the court too, right? The more we surround ourselves with high level, disciplined, and motivated players, the higher the probability will be that we're influenced in that same manner. And we start to take on some of those traits from those other people around us. And so the same thing's going to happen on the court, right? If you surround yourself with a high level environment, high level training partners, high level coaches and players, you're going to be influenced in that way too. So it's definitely true. I've seen this with many people that might not have had a great training environment, and when you compared them with some peers that had a better training environment, with players pushing them on a daily basis, their peers beating up on them left and right, and having this healthy competition back and forth, it usually those people with the better training environment ended up doing better. I think back to why was the junior group of Taylor Fritz, Riley Opelka, Francis Tiafoe, Alex Rybakov, Stefan Kozlov, so many of the guys in that group, Tommy Paul, why did they end up doing so well? I mean, how many of these guys ended up making top 150 in the world? Is because they just kept pushing each other. They were training with each other all the time. One person was winning a tournament, and then the next person would say, well, I want to, if they can win a tournament, then I can win a tournament too. And then they go and they beat up each other in practice, and there's this healthy competition because they never want to lose to each other. And then every now and then, from time to time, pros would come in, train with them at the USTA. They would get to see what it's like to be at the highest level. Then they would see how much more room for growth they have. But also at the same time, they would see that, hey, maybe there is a way for them to get that good. They would see that they can kind of hang in there with them. So that motivated them to want to do it even more and more and push themselves to work harder when they were tired. So I've seen it firsthand. And yes, it does help to have higher level training partners. Take the other side of it. I've seen others when, if you're surrounded by practice partners that, if you're in a junior drill group and most of your group doesn't really care. They don't really care about tournaments. They're just there to have fun. They're not working that hard. It's kind of hard when you're the hardest working player there because let's just say you're the best one or you're working the hardest. No one's pushing you. It's all coming from within, and odds are they're not that focused. So the quality of their shots coming back is pretty low, and it's not fun for you. So you look at the top courts and you never even really get to experience, you know, what that level of tennis is like. So you're not even 100% sure if you can even compete at that level. And the only time you really see that level is when you finally get to a tournament, but you've never had any practice with those players of that level. So you then it's harder for you to catch up in that tournament. You just don't have that experience. You're not used to that level of ball speed. But if you're able to get that in practice, then you show up to the tournament and you're more prepared to cause, one of these upsets when you play a seed early in rounds. So it's definitely helpful to have higher level training partners with you as much as possible. Now, here's some other details that we have to discuss. Just because you're with a high level, not with a high level group, or maybe the players aren't as high level as you would like, doesn't mean you can't improve. I've always felt, look, a player first has to earn the right to move up in training groups, to be with higher level training partners. And that starts with their own self-discipline, their own work ethic. Are they showing the coaches every day in that drill group that they want more tennis, that they work that hard, and that group is leaving them behind. It's keeping their level low. Because a lot of times what players will do is they'll just complain about their group. And so what they'll do is they'll do just enough to always beat those kids in that group, but they won't actually try to exceed because they don't see the reward for it right away. They're not being moved up in groups. So they're winning anyway. So they're like, why do I need to try harder? Why am I going to exhaust myself? And those players are missing the big point. Okay, because when they start acting like that, they're actually giving a reason for the coaches to not move up in groups. They're saying, well, they don't work that hard. I mean, yeah, so the best player in that group, but that group ahead of him works way harder than them. We can't just throw them in there. Like, that's not fair to them. They're not laying it all out on the line. They haven't earned the right to move up. Because remember, you don't just move up in groups just by winning. Okay, it's not just a UTR thing, though some academies do only group things just by UTR. But it really happens with how hard are you working? Are you proving it to your coaches? Do they see like how bad you want it? And are you doing everything extra to get better? And that the only thing left is to finally move you up in training groups. Because if you don't do all those things well, you're giving them reasons to not move you up. So that's one thing I think players need to take care of first. If all you're doing is just complaining about the group you're in, but not putting in the work and showing that effort and motivation and playing tournaments and stretching and doing strength and conditioning, doing all the extra thing, if you don't do all of that, you're giving the coaches excuses to not move you up. So don't give them that. All right. Give them every reason to move you up. And if they still never move you up, okay, well, then you can think about moving to a different academy group because at that point you're doing everything you can, and for whatever reason they're holding you back. But at that point I would suggest you go up to those coaches, you go up to the person running the academy and you say, hey, what do I need to do to move up in groups? Like, I want to get better, I'm doing everything I possibly can. And then let them answer for it. And then if they give you a reason that you've never thought of before, you know what, prove them wrong. Whatever they want, do it. Just get to the point where they have no reasons to move you up. And then at that point, then you can say, you know what, maybe I got to go somewhere else. So that's one side of things too. If too many people just they don't put in the effort because they don't see the reward. Well, you can still get better as well, even at that lower level. So think about this, okay? When you go to a tournament, oftentimes your first round of main draw or consolation, or at some point, maybe you get so good that even your first two rounds are they're going to be weaker level opponents. You have to know how to play and beat those kids. Too many people play down to the level of the players they're playing against. And that comes from their lack of discipline and practice to have a certain standard of focus and work ethic. So then they'll pay the price in tournaments because they'll have bad losses. So they don't even get a chance to play the higher level kids and prove how good they think they actually are because they play such terrible matches against lower level players. I hear this so much. Oh, my child, they play better when they play up, and when they play somebody of a lower level, they'll play down. So they all and then the answer ends up being from them, well, we should always play up. No, right? Because one, you're still not winning just because you play up. You might be playing better, but what I've seen a lot of these kids is they still lose. They just play a better quality match. And then they don't learn how to win either, right? They're just losing so much, but they're playing better in their eyes. They're playing, it feels better. So, no, you got to learn how to beat the people below you before you can learn how to beat the people above you. So, that's another reason why we want to make sure that even if you practice with somebody of a lower level, there are things you can work on. There's technique that you can work on, maybe certain footworks, but definitely your work ethic and focus that will translate into real matches. So work on that in practice. All right. If you always need a certain type of environment to motivate you, that's a problem. You're too influenced by the environment around you. So you want to be able to take care of who you are and how you act and how you play and how you behave, no matter what's around you. So then again, you're going to give the coaches no excuses to keep you down at that level, but you're also going to be preparing yourself for matches to always be focused and always be ready. So you can still get better even at a lower level. And that's something that a lot of parents don't always see, is that they want their child to move up to the higher level group in order to improve the most. Yes, you'll probably improve the most at that higher level group, but if you're not improving at all at that lower level group, again, you're showing that there's a problem and that there's a lack of discipline issue, and that if you're not taking care of what you need to take care of at that lower level, you're giving the coaches reason to not move you up. So that's another thing I want to say there. So now on to the final part that makes it tricky for all the coaches involved that are trying to run academies, they're trying to help players. This is a really tricky part, and I think parents need to understand this, okay? We've already admitted, and we've said the truth. We definitely get better when we're training with a higher level group of players. The better the environment, the better off that player will be in improving. We've already said that, okay? I don't think anybody's going to deny that. The problem is that every time you move up somebody to a higher level group, guess what? That group is now playing with a lower level player. Is that fair to them? Maybe, maybe not. It's completely fair for your child if they moved up, right? Now they're in the great environment, but that higher level group just took on somebody that maybe has a lot of potential, right? Maybe they're going to turn out to be fantastic, and that's probably why that coach moved them up, that they're probably going to work into that level. They've earned the right to be there. But for the time being, that group just brought in a lower level player. The level of that overall environment potentially just got a little bit lower, especially if that child for some reason doesn't have the greatest work ethic. So again, I don't think the coach would put him there if they didn't have great work ethic. But think about that. Who's the biggest beneficiary of being in that high level group now? It's the person who just moved up. So that's the tricky part for coaches, right? They're trying to do what's best for everyone. And there's going to be times where on certain days, it's more fair for somebody else to be in a certain group. And on others, it's going to feel unfair because maybe they were moved down a group. Look, it can't always be perfect. And a coach can't take one child's, they can't give too much priority to one child. They have to try to be equal to everybody. And that's the hard part for coaches in academies. There's always going to be a higher level group. There's always going to be a higher level training environment. Until you become number one in the world, there's always someone better you can train with. So what are you going to do? At some point, it just becomes hard to move people up. It gets trickier and trickier and trickier. At lower levels, it's a lot easier. There's more lower level people. As you move up, there's less players that you have at that level. The pools are smaller to grab from, which means the groups are going to be smaller and the levels aren't going to always be perfect. And a coach is going to try to do the best that they can to have the best groups for everybody. For the most part, I'd say a lot of players in that academy that day are going to feel like they should probably be at a higher level group. There's only going to be a few players that are going to be like, this group is perfect for me. Everyone else is going to be wanting to move up to that higher level group. You know, they're like, wow, that's where I'm going to, if I play with them, then I'm going to get better faster. Well, yeah, but what about them then? What about that higher level player? Do they get to move up? Why should they practice with a lower level player? And I think that's the tricky part that parents need to be aware of and players need to be aware of as well. I also have already stated that you can get better practicing with lower level players, right? So you can get better practicing with lower level players and with higher level players and with equal level players. But the thing is, you also don't want too much of one versus the other. Okay. You want to be able to mix up everything. So that's where the coach's balance is, right? Sometimes you're going to be practicing with a lower level player. You got to learn how to play against them. We already talked about that. Other times you're going to practice with a higher level player. You're going to get beat up a bit. You'll probably improve faster, but you got to learn how to play at that higher level speed. And then other times you're going to be practicing with people that are very equal level. I mean, that's the goal. That's what a coach wants for everybody. They want a good, diverse group with that different types of levels, but it's not easy to find. And that's the hard part. There's especially when you start to be one of the best in your age and you run out of people your age to train with. I find this a lot in the younger kids, right? If you get really good at 11, 12, 13, there's not a lot of just unbelievable 11, 12, 13-year-old kids. And the power discrepancy is tough. So you have a lot of just kind of after schoolers at 11, 12 that, they don't even play that many tournaments, but that's what comprises most groups. When you get to kind of 16, 17, your high performance groups, if somebody's still playing at that level, they're probably pretty darn good. Um, but there's not a lot of great kids at like a 12, 13-year-old level that you can just find a big pool of kids to train with. So that's the tricky part. Once you're 14 or 15, you might have the power to be able to practice with a 17-year-old from time to time. If there's a really good 12-year-old, they can probably move that 12-year-old up to you a little bit, depending on how much that kid started to grow. But yeah, I mean, it's tricky. So I think that's why I couldn't just do this in a simple blog, because I think all of this needs to be explained. It's not straightforward. Okay. What's straightforward is the idea that yes, the better our training environment is, the faster we're probably going to improve, the easier it's going to be to stay motivated. But you can get better practicing with lower level players and equal level players. That's for sure. Okay. It's not only with higher level players, it's with everybody. And what's more important is your work ethic on a daily basis than just your level of group. Okay. It's a combination of those things. And then finally, the tricky part is the players the coaches and academies have. Okay. They don't have enough players for every level of group, for every single age level, for every single gender, right? Some boys like practicing with boys. Some girls only like practicing with girls. It's just the way it is, but they can't always fill everyone's needs. And again, if you move somebody up to a higher level group, is it fair for that player? From time to time, yes, but not always. So let's keep these things in mind. It's a tricky situation. We all have the goal, of course, to give the best training environment for everybody, but parents, coaches are doing the best they can. Players, you got to do the best that you can and make sure that you are not giving any reason for coaches to move you down. Okay. And if you're not being moved up, then just ask why. Get the reason, find out, and then just take care of that reason. All right. And parents, look, we love that you care about your kids and you're doing everything for them and you want the best for them. And so you're going to vouch for them every time. Do that. That's your job as a parent. But be understanding of the coach's situation. They're trying to do the best they can, not just for your child, but for everybody involved. And sometimes things aren't fair for everybody. Don't crush them on it. Just let them know, and hopefully the coach is respectful and responsive in their response back. And they've earned your trust to say that they are doing everything they can to help improve the group. So these are my thoughts on how important a training environment is. Very important, but it's also not that easy to just solve just like that. All right. So be patient out there. Do the best you can. Coaches, do the best you can. Parents, keep vouching for your kids. But players, you more than anyone, you got to take care of your daily work ethic and your standards. And then I promise you, coaches want to help you. That's why they're doing this. Okay. They are coaching because they want to help players get better. You take care of your stuff, they're going to take care of you. Maybe not today, but definitely in due time. All right. Good luck out there and keep up the good grind.